The funding for this program is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Friends of 4, 10, and 12.
In what's been called a monumental feat of engineering and cooperation, the people of Burley managed to avoid what could have been a disastrous flood. But salvation didn't come without a price. Tonight we'll have that story. Good evening. Officials of the National Weather Service had some good news today. They say one of Idaho's worst flood seasons in memory is just about over. Most of the state's swollen rivers are expected to crest today or tomorrow. Flood warnings remain in effect in several locations tonight: on the Snake River at Heisey, on Henry's Fork at Rexburg, the Portneuf and Pocatello, the Bruno at Bruno Hot Springs, and the South Fork of the Clearwater at Stites. All of that excess water over the past month has been expensive. State disaster officials today put the bill at more than $4 million in Twin Falls County alone, and big bills are also expected in Bannock and Cassia counties. All three counties have been declared disaster areas. That paves the way for possible state and/or federal aid. But things are not as bad as they could have been. In fact, they're far better than they could have been. Cooler temperatures have reduced the flooding threat in many areas, and in one place, local residents took it upon themselves to head off what could have been the state's most damaging flood. Oakley Reservoir in Cassia County near Burley came within 18 inches of overflowing. That it didn't was not the result of a quirk in the weather, but rather the result of a massive engineering feat that built a 24-mile-long canal in 3 days at a financial and emotional cost impossible to measure. It is not often that you get a story like that, full of danger, compassion, sacrifice, and doubt. And it's also not often that a piece of television journalism can make that kind of story come alive. We think that MacNeil-Lehrer NewsHour did such a piece last week, and we think it's worth seeing again. After that, we'll spend the rest of the half hour talking with two people intimately involved with what is truly an amazing project. The piece was shot between May 17th and May 20th in the Burley area. It originally aired last Wednesday. The reporter was Kwame Holman.
Last winter's record snowpack is melting and filling this reservoir 20 miles outside the small town of Burley, Idaho. Usually, the people of this area rejoice at having water. This is an agricultural community, and the farmers here depend on water for irrigation. But this year, there is too much water, and it's threatening to overflow the town's 140-foot dam. That hasn't happened since 1921. If it goes over, the water would go right down the middle of the valley, over acres of fertile farmland, through the newly built subdivisions, and touch the heart of downtown Burley. Terry Bingham is the local civil defense coordinator.
It'd only be a few feet deep. It wouldn't be a raging torrent, just enough to kill every crop that it ran across. The local economy and tax base would be shattered.
Instead of waiting for that to happen, Terry Bingham and the people of Burley got moving. They decided to build a canal to divert the excess water from the reservoir to the Snake River, a canal that would be 24 miles long, 75 feet wide, and 3 feet deep.
It's a massive undertaking. I saw a couple of those big bulldozers, biggest ones I've ever seen, roll off these 13, I think one of them had 10 axles, 10-axle truck. I had to stop for a second and just think about what we're doing here.
They started on Thursday when the water was 5 feet short of overflowing. If the canal isn't finished on time, Leland Baker's home and farm will be directly in the water's path. So he's working 20 hours a day as a volunteer.
I hope we can get it done in time, but the water's still rising. It keeps giving us a little bit of a reprieve, but with this warm weather and stuff, I'm hoping along with everybody else that we can get it done, because it's going to cause some awful damage if we can't.
The Army Corps of Engineers, the Mormon Church, government agencies, and hundreds of local workers and volunteers got busy. They worked day and night. No one had ever seen anything like it.
I've had two other large undertakings in my life, and one of them was getting out of college, and the other one was getting my instrument rating for pilot's license. And both of those pale in comparison with the amount of the intensity that this is taking to try to organize and keep track of.
The project in Burley is not just a matter of coordinating volunteers and machines. It's the story of a few people having to make a sacrifice to help the rest of the town. The canal will have to cut through dozens of farms. Marvin Blacker and his wife Lovell have worked their farm for 30 years.
Now that's going to come right through this pond. This is a natural pond where we've used for irrigation purposes. You can see the stakes out through, the flags out through the field there.
Normally, Marvin's farm would be unaffected by the dam's flooding, but the canal will eat up some of his best topsoil. His irrigation system will be disrupted, and he will have to travel 6 miles to get to his wheat crop because he won't be allowed to build a bridge over the canal. Marvin and other farmers have no assurance of being repaid for all the damage.
Well, it's going to cut the heart out of this farm, and it's just the way right now, this is the feeling I have, that it's just cutting the heart out of my husband, because this has been from boyhood, this is his dream, was to have a farm of his own and a family on a farm. And
yeah, I guess this whole world's the world of give and take, and sometimes it seems like we're always taken or always given, and somebody else is taken, and you keep thinking, well, it's the same people that have to take and the same people that give all the time, and maybe this is right, but I guess in the end it'll all come out, we hope. That's the only promise. I hope I'm big enough to make it through.
It's a gut-wrenching thing, I know. I can see the expressions on their faces and in their eyes when I talk to them. This community has a moral obligation to these people that are being hurt to save the rest of us.
If the banks of the new canal don't hold, the Blackers will have even more problems. Last week, the banks of another city-built canal eroded and finally caved in.
You lose a lot of...
could lose our home.
You could lose everything. There's a mass of water that's going to be coming. You know that. How we're going to handle it, we don't know.
Let's put one more row on here.
The Blackers are also worried that the bulldozers won't make it past their farm before the waters are released. That would mean all the water meant for the Snake River would end up here. By Friday, the bulldozers hadn't come, and the dam was 3 feet from overflowing.
Before, in 1921, the previous high flow was 750 cubic feet per second. And on Wednesday, we hit 1,380. And then Thursday, yesterday, it was 1,405, something like that.
On Saturday afternoon, the bulldozing crew was still a mile from the Blacker farm, approaching at an agonizing rate of 1/6 of a mile every hour.
Well, it's roughly 3:15, and they keep saying it was, first our date was yesterday afternoon, and last night they told us they'd be here by noon. We're getting late. Every story we get's a little different.
At 6 p.m., the Blackers got one last promise.
Hopefully we'll have to come over here and do this before it gets dark.
Just before dark, the bulldozers came.
That's a big hole, isn't it? 130 foot wide. Wow. Mercy, that's a big hole.
The canal had made it to the Blackers' farm before the dam overflowed, but they had lost almost twice as much of their land as promised. The next morning at 8, the canal was ready to be tested. The water was within 2 feet of the top of the dam. It was released into a spillway and then into the canal. The shoring up of the canal walls continued one step ahead of the onrushing water. There were leaks everywhere, but overall the canal successfully contained the waters. The wait was over.
It's a learning experience for us, and I guess we'll grow by it. We're going to have a few scars and stuff, and take a long time to get over for some of the feelings we had, but we'll make it.
The people of Burley had constructed a 24-mile canal in just 3 days. It was a feat of engineering. But Terry Bingham's worries are not yet over.
We have another surge of water coming Wednesday. It's going to be 2-3 days to see how this canal works. And if we get a washing problem like we've had on the other one, we could end up fighting this for 2 weeks yet. So I don't know if we made it or not.
By now, Mr. Bingham is well aware that they did make it. He is a deputy sheriff in Cassia County and, as indicated, the county's director of disaster services. He joins us tonight in the studios of public television station KISU in Pocatello. Mr. Bingham, first, where do things stand tonight? Is the danger past?
About 1,000 cubic feet per second outflow from the dam. Inflow has been averaging about 700, 750. The level of the water at the dam is still about 2 inches above the old spillway, but it is in hand.
Have you been able to draw down the reservoir at all?
About 1.5 feet.
So essentially the danger is past.
Except for maintenance. Governor Evans and General Brooks have assigned the 126th Engineer dump truck company to us for their annual training. And we've been running their legs off for about 5 days now, trying to keep up with the soft spots in that green canal.
Reconstruct, if you will, just briefly, how the decision to take on this project was made and how you got it actually launched.
Oh, back towards the middle of April, it was brought to our attention that the potential for flooding at the Oakley Reservoir was severe. Contacted the State Bureau of Disaster Services. They put us in touch with the Corps of Engineers. Both sent representatives. We surveyed the area and what our options were. Initially, we started a canal that went towards Murtaugh Lake, about from the dam nearly 20 miles. Followed an old stream bed or canal bed that went out towards Cottonwood drainage, and then intercepted the Cottonwood drainage and took it into Murtaugh Lake. Just about the time that we finished that, Cottonwood Creek came up and took all of our capacity. We were expecting to take the water from the dam down through this canal and into Murtaugh Lake, and Cottonwood Creek came up 220%. There was 220% moisture in that drainage, and it's still rolling today. It's probably crested today, but it's taken our lower capacity. So we knew that that wasn't going to work, and the Corps of Engineers was on the scene Thursday morning, about 3 weeks ago. We were prepared to start it down the old Goose Creek drain, and thanks to the foresight of some farmers in the area and people who know the country, they found us a path to take and a natural drainage down to the Snake River. And in working with the Soil Conservation Service, the Corps of Engineers, the state agencies, we found that path, and it was approved at Walla Walla District Corps of Engineers, and we began.
In hindsight, are there things you would do differently?
It worked out very nicely all the way along. Would have been nice to have a month or two head start on it. The problem that we had on forecasting the amount of water that was coming towards us, it was real wet in November, real wet in November. In January and February it dried up, and it didn't look so bad. Towards the end of February it started with a lot of moisture again in those drainages, and kept going March, April, and just it got ahead of us.
So you think that criticisms that this should have been started sooner, planned for sooner, the diversion should have started sooner, just aren't justified?
Criticism isn't justified in that direction. The canal company was trying all winter long to take water out of there, and they were taking it out into the BLM grounds to the west of Oakley. And they were trying. It just got ahead of us.
We heard Mr. Blacker on the videotape. How are those farmers feeling now, the 40-odd whose land was sacrificed in part to this canal?
They were pleased to see it working. They know what was at stake, and they know that the decision to take the track that we did was not made without due consideration, and it has been good dealing with them. Human spirit is admirable, and I've seen it working in them.
You said on the videotape that the community has a moral obligation to those people. How confident are you that that obligation will be met?
Very confident. There are a number of people that I have a great deal of respect for that are working on it, that are throwing their time and their effort into it, and they won't be let down by our community, I know.
Thank you. We'll come back in just a moment. To make the canal possible, the Cassia County Board of Commissioners had to exercise its police power, and it had to do so without promising anyone payment for any damage they might sustain. That situation, at least at the time, didn't sit well with everyone. John Adams is one of the 3 members of that Board of Commissioners. He too joins us in Pocatello. Mr. Adams, you had what I imagine must have been an extremely tough decision to make, to hurt some people to save others. How did you go about making that?
Well, as you said, it was really a tough decision, but the thing that made it easy, I think, in my opinion, was the support of the whole Cassia County area to do just this, what was decided to do, you know. Although the people where the water was coming out of the old Goose Creek Channel and going through their farms were very upset, most of them realized that probably this was the best route to take. It was the natural route. To hurt the least people the least. And we had the support of the people. And because of that, and the time element was on us, you know, we had to act. The decision was made. And the support was there, and it was accomplished. Don't ask me how it was accomplished. I'm not sure Terry's even awake yet, considering what work was done, but it was done, and we feel that it was a good decision.
Let me ask you about the charge that's been made that route was chosen not because it was the better one, but because the other one would have impacted richer and more influential farmers.
It would have, the other route would have wiped out the Burley Irrigation District's canals. It would have covered the city of Burley. There's 15,000 acres under the Burley Irrigation Canal, so those acres probably wouldn't be able to have been irrigated for some time. I can't buy that reasoning. This was the best route.
How did you approach the people who were going to have to give up?
They were approached first by their neighbors, and because the route was chosen, they supported. In the meeting that we were at, I believe it was a Monday morning when it was decided we'd take this route and go ahead. Naturally, they were hurt and they didn't want it to occur, but they agreed to it. And
did they have any options, really?
Well, I always put myself in their shoes, and I can see that they really didn't have any options. However, the county had to go ahead, you know, and declare police action in order to speed up the process. Speed up the process because of the problem of getting rights to go through their land and so forth. And so we had to declare this police action, and we had to get the bulldozers going to get the canal built. And this may have created some feelings, because when they left that meeting at first in the morning, they didn't realize that there would be police action taken, and they thought maybe they would have a choice to maybe fight it or something. But the only way we could see as commissioners was to declare this action and get the job done.
Why was it necessary? You very carefully did not promise these people any compensation. Why was it necessary to be careful to do that?
Because legally we can't.
You just under...
We have no tax base in the county, see, to promise them compensation. There's no money. The money's already been budgeted for this year. That's state law.
Are you taking any heat for this now?
No, not really. Naturally comments and some people that are dissatisfied here and there, but as a whole, I was talking to Terry coming up today to Pocatello here, and really the sport has been great. I was to the cell this morning in Burley, and I was in a couple of stores this morning, and comments that were made was, we support you, it worked, we're just happy. You know, the feeling's been good. I can't complain a bit.
Let me open this up and get both of you into it now. Mr. Bingham, it was indicated on the videotape that Mr. Blacker, the farmer in that piece, lost about twice as much land as he had been promised he would lose. Was that a common kind of occurrence, and why did it happen?
Well, initially the idea was to have a 35 to 50 foot base in that canal, and after we got started and were moving forward, it was determined we needed a 70-foot bottom with a 3-foot cut, and the burden would be placed in dikes. The width of it did increase from the initial comments that we gave to the farmers involved. In hindsight, they were necessary. We're getting enough water down there now and having a good time of it, I think, and it was necessary.
I should mention here that one of those farmers whose land was disturbed by this was scheduled to be with us tonight. At the last minute he couldn't make it, and I'm essentially trying to play devil's advocate for some of the feelings that those farmers have expressed. One thing that Mr. Blacker said on the videotape, Mr. Bingham, in a rather, I think, emotional way, was the feeling that some people always seem to give and some people always seem to take. Did you run into that feeling much with those people?
I didn't. I've been very pleased with my relations with those people and the things they've had to say to me. Several of those farmers that were above the Goose Creek channel, the high line that we were taking to get west of Burley. Several of them were out there with their equipment tearing up their own farm ground and saying, "Hurry up, we got to get this done."
Mr. Adams, what do you make of that comment, the feeling that perhaps it's always the same people who give in these situations?
Well, I know if they had gone through my land, I would have felt like I was giving quite a bit. And I'm like Terry here. It was hard to do this. You know, if you see a bulldozer running down through your land, taking out a crop that you've planted already, and it was giving to save someone else on further down the channel. So I can understand why he may have said this, and it hurt them the worst, of course, but it hurt a lot of people. It hurt some of us on the county level that had to make the decisions of where to go, and so I feel that. I really feel that this was the best decision to run the water the way it was run, and sure, people had to give, and I think they felt it. They had to give.
You and Mr. Bingham clearly recognize and appreciate the sacrifice that these people have made. Do you think that the rest of the community does?
I think most of the community does. I really do. And you know, I didn't mean to say a few minutes ago that these people weren't going to be compensated. As far as the county's concerned, at the present time there are no monies to do this, but they are going to be compensated.
What are your options for finding ways to compensate them?
Right now there has been a committee organized in Cassia County to solicit contributions from the people of, especially around the Burley area and the farmers where this water didn't run, where it would have run, to help these people out and to pay some of the expenses. That's one thing that's occurring. And then I think in the end the county probably will have to farm a flood district, and we will have to tax the county not only to take care of this project, but to also help the eastern part of the county over in the Raft River area. They have really been hurt over in Raft River. They have got spread out water on their farm as we would have had in the Burley area and the Oakley area had not the canal been built. And they've got that over in Raft River, and so we're going to have to help them a little.
Any chance of federal money, state money?
We've looked into that, and we're still looking into it. Of course, you know, the Corps of Engineers and the National Guard has helped us a lot, and maybe that's their portion, I don't know. Small business loans, we understand, and FHA loans are available, but they would have to be paid back at interest, of course, due on that also, and some of these farmers have about all the interest they can pay on their debts already, and so it's a bleak picture. Outright grants or this type of thing, we haven't found them yet. We'd like to find some money somewhere, but I kind of get the feeling that the county is going to have to take care of this problem with the help of the Corps of Engineers, which I might mention has done a super job in my opinion, and of course the National Guard, who's with us now.
One dairy farmer indicated that if he essentially did not get paid back for what he lost, he might have to go out of business. Is that a fairly common situation among that group of people?
I'm sure it is. One of those operations was cut right in half. The channel, when it reached the natural drain and started down, goes right through the middle of their barnyard. They've got a footbridge to get across now, but they're having to drive around several miles to get into their barn. And if help isn't forthcoming for them, it could wipe them out.
Anybody got any idea what kind of money you're talking about here, Mr. Bingham?
I haven't the slightest idea.
Finally, let me ask both of you, there's been, as you're well aware, a lot of speculation that this is going to end up in court. One of the farmers predicted a long battle over the compensation issue. How likely do each of you think that this will end up ultimately in court?
Well, I would hope that it doesn't end up in court. In my experience, you seldom win in court. It's generally the lawyers or someone else who wins in court. And I get the feeling in this community that this can be settled out of court. And I know we're going to do all we can as a commission to do just that, to settle these problems out of court. Perhaps, we don't know what'll happen. I feel pretty optimistic about it myself.
Mr. Bingham, a very quick thought?
We have a mechanism in place to take care of these problems, and I think if we all stand together, shoulder to shoulder on this, we'll take care of our neighbors, and that is what I think is going to happen.
Well, thank you. We are out of time. I'd like to thank Terry Bingham and John Adams in Pocatello, and that's all the time we have for tonight. I'm Jean McNeil. Good night.
The funding for this program is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Friends of 4, 10, and 12.